Hello everybody, my name is Anthnwam. Welcome to a brand new Let's Play series in HOI4 Kaiserreich. So today, we're going to be playing as the French Republic because they did get an updated focus tree with the update of the Ottoman Empire. And we'll be trying to go down the new, I believe you're the national populist figure, Action Francais. Because, I mean, they're new. You couldn't be able to do that before. And you usually kind of want to do the new thing when it comes to any of these updates, right? It just makes sense. So I believe you want to try to get you in charge. Again, I'm pretty sure. So we'll go for, I think you're the only choice we have. These focus trees are really just spread out all over the goddamn place. So we'll then go for the fate of the Corridor Africa, because that's really the only option we actually have here. Research, of course, we'll go for our basics. You know, the ones that I go for at the beginning of every single Kaiserreich campaign. You can't stop me. So right now we have 14 divisions, 84 ships, and 75 aircraft. I think seems actually, you know, pretty decent. We got 12 units here. I'm assuming, yeah, 2 of them are down there. We don't really need troops down in the south as far as I'm concerned. We'll keep most of them basically just on this northern front here. Assign you under this dude. And then assign you under Pétain. That seems okay. Also, turn off Fog of War because it looks horrible. So, the situation of the French Republic and its history. The Third Republic fell in the same way that it came to be, in defeat of the German arms and facing socialist unrest. As the civil war that followed the Communal Revolution of 1920 eventually came to a close, the government chose exile instead of surrender. I retreated to Marseille and then embarked with the French Navy towards Algiers, hoping that this temporary situation would soon be resolved as the newly created Federation of Communists of France would undoubtedly either quickly collapse on itself or be put down by the Boches. Neither happened, and instead, a peace treaty was concluded between the German Empire and the Commune, with little to no regard towards the exiled government. The Commune was recognized as the successor of the French Republic by most of the newly German-aligned world, with the exiles remaining seen as a legitimate government by those who fought beside them in the Weltkrieg. But the refugees refused to be cowed. They renewed their claim to legitimate government of all of France and her empire, and the commitment to the Entente, preparing for any opportunity to strike. However, the aftermath of the exile proved highly unstable. The democratic forces proved unable to form a lasting government, instead of descending even further into petty squabbles, a situation made worse by the tension between exiles and the Pieds Noirs colonists. In 1926, the army stepped in, declared a state of emergency, and formed a thinly veiled junta under the line of Verdun, Philippe Pétain. Supported by many heroes of the Weltkrieg, such as protege Admiral François Darlin or General Henry Mordac, the supreme commander of the French military, which holds a tight grip on the state, Pétain has total control over France. The constitution has never been amended, nor annulled, and as such, the republic and its institutions continue to exist on paper, though the parliament does little more than rubber stamp decisions made by the marshal and his cadres. Political parties still exist and continue to operate to give to the population the illusion of democracy, though few are idealistic enough to believe that they have any real power. The four main political parties are the Radical Party, the Democratic Republican Party, an alliance born in exile in various regional liberal conservative parties, the French Social Party, and the French Action Party. Those accursed communards. The situation of France, the political situation. Marshal Pétain is convinced that authoritarian rule is needed for the salvation of France, but though the prestige of the radicals and the PRD is low, they are still seen as holding a share of responsibility in the defeat and revolution as the main parties of the Third Republic. They still enjoy some popular support, while the PSF created after the war by veterans is seen as, by many, as striking a needed middle way between democracy and a strong rule, such as banning the parties that would create more instability at a time when the Republic cannot afford it. On the other hand, none of these democratic parties are strong enough to impose anything on the Marshal, so widely popular among veterans who see him as a lion of Verdun, while the armed forces see him as the only one able to properly prepare France for the fight against the Internationale. But the regime's balancing act cannot last forever, and a more democratically minded are beginning to lose confidence in the regime, while royalists, the Action Francais, believe the salvation of France can only come with the toppling of the Republic and its institutions. An idea many within the army and among traditional French and native elites are worryingly receptive to. To put it simply, the junta is slowly beginning to losing political credibility, and is now mainly held together by the prestige of Pétain. Be careful if failure to keep the resistance of non-core African states under 80 will result in revolts. Okay, I'm sure we'll be fine with that. And now, growing concerns. As if the lack of civilian support wasn't enough, trust in the Marshal is starting to erode even within the army, the backbone of the regime. Baton's favoritism towards his protégés has put many in key positions, and though they are certainly competent, many officers are left behind while others worry that this could encourage doctoral rot. That Baton is surrounding himself with yes-men. Some within the Marshal entourage have, however, been openly critical of the state of affairs, such as Henry Murdoch, and for now, this discontent within the army is limited to debate, as many hope that Baton will eventually listen to the more reform-minded protégés. One thing is clear, however, an escalation of these divisions will prove disastrous for the regime. The most important problem facing the nation, however, is simply the situation in exile. Though in Algeria officially annexed part of France in the Overseas Department in the late 19th century, exiles and Pied Noir settlers make up a significant part of the population. In some major cities, even making up the majority. Overall, Europeans are still a small minority, ruling over millions of indigenous, who, despite being considered Frenchmen, are essentially second-class citizens, subject to heavy taxes and forced labor. With rule from Algiers enforced by native elites in the army, since the defeat in the Wildkrieg, the colonial situation is precarious. Unrest is ruthlessly put down, recent famines have been badly managed, syndicalists and pan-Arab agents spread propaganda against colonial authorities. However, most traditional indigenous elites are still loyal to France, and there exists a growing class of French-educated natives and the native war veterans who, despite wanting reform, remain loyal. One thing is clear, the government is careless, further unrest and perhaps even revolts are bound to happen. So what territory do we have is actually considered all of this? Okay, and you're all immediately upset with the government, which is, I mean, I can understand it. I don't approve of it, but I understand it. So what is your what unrest do you sit at right now? Your base sitting unrest is 59%. So yeah, again, as far as it stays below 80, we should be mostly okay. Kornilov stormed Russia because Kerensky's been shot. Really, none of those affect us too much. Also, yeah, we should be doing stuff with our factories now. So we're going to go to some military factories in the north. Get our army and navy experience. We have 53,000 manpower. We don't have enough resources to go around. We're missing support equipment for... We're missing 8, which is not actually that bad. You want some aluminum. You also need aluminum for the aircraft. So, you know what? Going for 1 level of aluminum, I think, seems okay. We'll get that from the United States. At least until it collapses. And then we'll probably try to find some other trading partner. But I'm sure that won't be a big deal. So we have our Air Force here. Close air support, interception. That should be fine for now. Again, I mean, what do you rest at? You rest at 40%. Colonial resistance, victory points. Stability, okay, stability is at -3%. Which I will admit is not great, right? It's really not the situation we want to be. The death of a friend. The king is dead. His Majesty George V. Oh no, this is about the yeah, no, the British king's dead. Who cares? It doesn't affect France too much. The fate of cordial French Africa. For a long time, we held out hope that occupation of many of our previously owned colonies by the Germans would be short. Their widespread expansion across the globe may have produced the conditions needed for them to collapse, but the cynical regime in the metropole failed to disintegrate, and we have been forced to remain entrenched in Algiers, staring daggers at our brothers and sisters across the Mediterranean. Then our long-standing ally, the United Kingdom, fell apart in 1925, leaving us in no condition to returning our colonies to our rule. Ending the last of his tenure as Governor General, while remains of the French of Cordial Africa, Raphael Antoni has made his decision to step down from his post, citing a failing in his health in recent years. Antoni has been held his position since 1924, seeing the region through several turbulent times, and well earning his retirement after his service. With the seat left vacant, it may now be time to merge our colonial sub-Saharan governments into one united administration. German Empire remains ascendant across the globe, and a split focus on resource allocation is a waste of time and effort. With only a narrow portion of the colonial region of Chad remaining under French Court of Africa, we must move to merge Chad into French West Africa administration. Someday, our rightful territory might return to us, but that day is not today. So we get 2% stability, which is quite nice. There's now a new king of Canada. You give us opinion. Yeah, congratulations to the new monarch. We'll be getting our own monarchy quite soon. Don't you worry about that. Yes, that's fight for us. I do have compliance with 5% in French Sudan. Your political power goes up. You know what? Let's we start the railway. You know what? Let's just get one civilian factory. I did have it pulled up what we actually need to do in order to make sure we actually get the right path. So I'm not worried about that. I feel like we should be okay. All things considered. What do we... No template for total artillery. That's fine. We're going to need artillery at some point anyways. So why not have it get it ready now? Actually, if anything, we might as well get naval invasion plans drawn up. Can we train more units? I mean, you are an 18 combat with. You're 20 with some tank divisions, which is a little bit strange, but okay. I think you're mostly these types of troops, actually. Which is interesting. Yeah, so let's train up. I mean, like, I can't really train units right now. Even though I do want to. Canada, do you want us to go to war with you? Going to war loses, like, drops stability. I have no interest in actually joining a war. It makes no sense. As a Grand Grey, two schools of thought have emerged among the younger superior officers to explain a military defeat. If both conclude the defeat was primarily caused by inefficiency, personal feuds, and a general lack of coordination within the military high command, wasting the bravery and blood of the French infantrymen, as well as the strategic and tactical innovations of Philippe Pétain. They disagree on what caused those issues, and most importantly, on what should be done to correct them. Two men have emerged as leaders of these factions in the French army, and both are planning to release books explaining their point of view. They've sent copies to the Marshal in hopes of getting some public support for the work over the opposition. Again, we want to side, I believe, with de Gaulle, right? De Gaulle is the leader of this movement. The bear or the rooster? Next, we want to get Charles de Gaulle in charge here. So the bear or the rooster. Henry Murdoch, nicknamed the Bear, an infantry general who shot up the ranks during the Great War through sheer bravery and commanding ability, particularly in the desperate defense of Arras, close to Bataan, but a long-time critic of the military establishment. He believes the war was lost due to lack of experienced officers and an out-of-touch high command. He plans to release a book called Letters of 1914 and the Next War, detailing his experiences of the war and proposals for the coming war. Among those proposals, retirement of all officers older than 56 years old and emerging of all branches of the armed forces could prove controversial, effectively organizing the French armies from scratch. Charles de Gaulle, nicknamed the Rooster, recently promoted to the rank of lieutenant colonel, a fellow veteran of the Great War. He bravely led his men at the Battle of Verdun before being wounded and captured. Escaping captivity, he became a symbol of resilience against German aggressors. Particularly ambitious, he became a protege of the Lion of Verdun, a renowned military theorist, making rather similar observations regarding the defeat of as Murdoch, but advocating for greater cooperation rather than reorganization. A greater use of armor with air support, greater autonomy for officers, and creating alongside the traditional conscript army a more important core professional soldiers. These proposals have found a lot of support among the officers, but de Gaulle's planning to release another essay simply entitled The Discord. This essay is simply presented as a collection of observations on the confusion reigning among the officers during the war. To some, it seems to endorse the stab in the black theory, popular among civilians, soldiers, and officers alike, especially considering de Gaulle's proposal to prevent confusion at critical times, is submission to the military to moral civilian power. Marshal Pétain could choose to support the publication of either of those books, effectively setting the course for reforms in the army, or simply let the debate run its course. Yes, we'll support the Rooster, because we want to support de Gaulle if you want to go on the new French Republic path. Clash against the Tuaregs. The war led against Tuaregs in Niger during the 1910s has been successful, but led to another unsuspected problems. The Tuaregs, having been driven after some of their usual roaming lands, have been made to sometimes live in more inhospitable regions. They're unable to rely on cattle farming, they usually do, they become more creative. This was the reason for their attack this morning on the Nigerian village, close to the desert but fertile enough to have farms and reserves. The small Tuareg force arrived at dawn to pillage the farms and steal the food reserves. But they didn't anticipate the presence of a small French patrol resting in the village. The French presence wasn't planned, and it only constituted a few soldiers accompanying the colonial officer, but it was enough to try to stop the Tuaregs. A few shots made one of the horses fall, with a Tuareg tribesman falling on his head. Another Tuareg was shot in the belly. A French soldier was gravely injured before the force fled and left the village. The French soldier got to congratulate themselves for leaving to help their wounded friend. The village, however, had to rebuild on its own. So Niger does not like us. I mean, come on, you're 52%, low stability, recent colonial unrest. I mean, what are we on right now? We're on civilian oversight. We don't want to be. We want to be on local police force. Typically, I think that's just the best option. It leads to some lower compliance gain, but that's fine. Lad Discord. Supported by Marshal Baton and highly anticipated, the Discord by Lieutenant Colonel Charles de Gaulle has immediately become a bestseller. Praised by critics for thought-provoking telling of the confusion reigning among officers during the Field Creek, while it's nothing new to those that have lived through it, many in the general public, particularly the younger generation, too young to have fought in the Grand Guerre, dumbfounded this uncomfortable truth. The defeat was by our own doing more than anything else, with the tactical and strategic reforms proposed in this essay by de Gaulle has been acclaimed by officers. It is the larger societal reform, some see the Rooster hint at his work, that struck a chord with many in the armed forces. From the simple infantryman to the Lion of Verdun himself, and amongst civilians, particularly veterans, all those sacrifices, so much bloodshed, so many lives lost, how could they not have been beaten? How could they... My brain stopped. Okay. So many lives lost. How could they not have had enough to beat back the Bolsheviks? The issue must lie primarily elsewhere in the government, too weak to impose its will upon the armed forces, and far too willing to let them fall into fatal discord. Perhaps a stronger, more moral civilian power is needed. In any case, de Gaulle, already celebrated war hero and influential officer, is quickly becoming an even more popular figure, as many of those touched by his call to reform feel he is the perfect example of a new generation of officers must aspire to be like. While some see him the perfect man to help carry on the larger reforms, the Lieutenant Colonel himself is quick to defer any praise towards his mentor, Philippe Pétain. Okay, we got some things happening in China. Again, doesn't affect us too much, I believe. And I think a war just broke out. Yeah, in China. Not a big surprise. So what do we need to be worried about? Well, we need to be able to invade France, of course. That kind of goes without saying. But if you have seen our videos in the Armament campaign, you will know that the British actually managed to invade Morocco and got, like, pretty decently strong in there and took it over, which directly threatened the French Republic. So we got to make sure that does not happen, right? It seems obvious. We've rebuilt French Sudan. The lesson 1914 and the next war. Henry Murdoch and his lessons of 1914 and the next war, privately published, finding moderate success and critical praise for its acute analysis of the defeat. Though the sweeping reorganization proposed by the Bear had become controversial among higher officers for being too radical, and among the general public for on the contrary, not doing enough to tackle the real problem exposed by de Gaulle's essay. However, those less enthusiastic about the discord, particularly those anxious of what the more moral civilian order might entail, have found in Murdoch an alternative, and see in a general a potential political leader, someone to go against the grain of the stab in the back fervor currently sweeping through the nation. What else can we do? We can get you going. Let me just take a double check that we're not missing anything here. What do you need to do? Like, you're the Restoration. If Action Francais rules the nation. This is kind of what we're trying to lean towards. So yeah, we will go for the Saharan infrastructure project. Get some good stuff going. So, like, what do you guys... Yeah, you said at 28%. 28% is not so bad. I don't think I can, like, not press the button. So, the White Fathers. Critical to the stability of the regime, the Society of Missionaries of Africa is a Catholic society of apostle life, focusing on evangelism and the education of Africa. Founded in 1868 in Algiers, they quickly became an integral part of the colonial society, adapting to native customs, adopting a native dress, all while accomplishing a tremendous amount of ethnographical and geographic research. They have been on the forefront of the French initiatives of the continent, despite their sometimes strained relationship with the increasingly anti-clerical Republican government. They have become staunch advocates for native populations, even accepting native priests. Never hesitating to side with them against the colonial authorities when needed, and generally acting as a bridge between the two, earning the affectionate name of White Fathers. In the troublesome times since the Revolution, they have become downright crucial to maintaining French authority over what is left of its empire. Working tirelessly to maintain peace between colonies, exiles, and natives, with fully support from the Marshal's conservative government. Well, thank you for the tube sensibility, because right now we are at, as you can tell, very, very, very low. Our stability is just absolutely, it's dog shit, basically. But I do think that for right now, this is going to be a good time for us to end this episode. So thanks to everybody for watching my ASM. If you enjoyed, thumbs up. Not enjoyed, thumbs down. If you want to see more, subscribe, and goodbye.